that's one of the things that with a blue-collar job is there's very little room for creativity. I mean, it's just kind of like your jobs right now. You guys really feel like you're creating anything. Probably most of it is that mentality that comes with, working for somebody else. You know you're working 40 hours a week, you get 2 weeks of vacation. There's not a lot of room for freedom or creativity. You're probably being told what to do as opposed to going, hey, why don't you take this project and develop it and create it? But I think in a man's life, there has to be a place for an adult man to create. And it's probably why it'll squeak out somewhere. But I think for most blue-collar workers, it's not an option. It's really you're kind of either, it's kind of what Zane was talking about, where you're either maintaining or you're managing someone else's dream or idea. And that's a really hard place for a man to be.
I think what I want to share with you guys in that is, is looking at Christ. We kind of said a little bit there, but what did Christ choose as a job? I think this is so huge. Christ fully practiced the divine commandment to work. He spent 30 years living like any other villager in Nazareth. Okay, he took a common job. At the time, that was carpentry. It wasn't that carpentry's the answer, but he took the common man's job, earning a reputation on account of his work. He was simply called the carpenter's son. It's in Matthew 13:54. Literally, he wasn't even identified because he came from that family legacy. Okay, so that was his work was almost how people associated with him. The fact that Jesus grew up and lived just like us shows that human existence and all the ordinary activity of men have a divine meaning. And so I think what you guys are experiencing, I love, if you guys want to write this down, because you all have this book in Iron John, it's page 69 and 70. He's calling it kitchen work. He's talking about kind of the experience you guys are going through. He's using a story, a metaphor, which is what Iron John is. So some of this is a metaphor. But to fall from being a king's son, so being a privilege, to fall from being a king's son to being a cook is the step the story asks for. Carrying wood and water, sweeping, doing hard labor, working in the basement of the castle where the kitchen is, stands for the drop through the floor, the descent, the humiliation, the way down now. For young men who have graduated from privileged colleges or who have been lifted up by the expensive entitlement culture, their soul life often begins with this basement work in the kitchen. The mark of descent, whether undertaken consciously, right, choosing it or unconsciously, I never necessarily picked that, it just kind of came, is a newly arrived at lowliness associated with water and soul as a height and associated with spirit. The lowliness happens particularly to men who are initially high, lucky, and elevated. Okay, so for many of us that have experienced that's part of the process God's really taking us on, this to another place. It makes him aware of a depression that may have been living unnoticed in him for years. A mean life of ordinariness, heaviness, silences, cracks in the road, weightiness, and soberness begin.